In this episode, we're going to finish building this neck, and we're going to do everything from the heel carve to the volute carve, installing tuners, installing the locking nut, and all of these frets. So stick around, because this is going to be a good one. Welcome back to the Tornelli Guitars workshop, and thanks for tuning in. There's loads and loads and loads I want to go through before we get into the work of the video. The first thing is to thank everybody who watched the last video and all of the new subscribers who joined the channel. I really appreciate it. It's a small channel. I'm trying to grow it, so all of you guys hitting the subscribe button and hitting the bell for notifications, even just hitting like and comment, is a huge support, and I can't really do the channel without you. So yeah, it's great that you guys are here. We're going to pick up where we left off. In the last episode, we carved the back of the neck. So we used the facet method for that, and we explained all about the facet method. And there are 6 previous videos in this series where I'm building a Les Paul for myself. I'll put the thumbnails on screen now once again. And if you're thinking of getting into guitar building, or you're already in the world of guitar building, these are tutorials really for somebody who's starting off, who's never built a guitar before. I go into a lot of detail with diagrams and explanations of everything I'm doing and why. So if you're new, this is the channel for you, and glad you can stick around. In this particular video, I'm really hoping we're going to finish doing all of the work that we need to do on the neck before we get back to building the body. All I've done here really is clamp this to the workbench. I have some foam underneath to protect the fingerboard, and I'm going to be working on the heel, as I mentioned. So the first thing we need to do really is just get the center carve up roughly towards where the neck is going to meet the body. Now we have lines drawn in for that here, and hopefully you can see them on the second camera. And we're going to stop short, maybe about 1 millimeter away from that line, because later when we're sanding, we need some material that we can still remove to sand everything smooth. If we go right to the line now with files, we won't have any material left to get it smooth. So that's really, really important. And the easiest way to do this is to get that curve from the center up and get that curve consistently from right to left as if it's a square block. And then we can taper it down towards the edges and bring it back here to meet this curve. There's no exact science to this. I'm using an array of tools here that are on the bench. I'll give you a photograph of those now. They're all different rasps and files and a couple of chisels, and even a Stanley knife, which you'll find will be very handy if you just want to get some tiny bits out of the way. As I'm doing this, I'm probably going to move around the workbench a little bit. I might unclamp this and reclamp it in different orientations, but I'm just going to get at it because there's really no method to this other than just doing it. And I'll stop a couple of times along the way and just show you what I've gotten done. That was a lot of carving, that was a lot of chiseling, that was a lot of sanding, but phase 1 is complete. So we have this transition running down the neck and up into the heel. It's a little bit proud here, but I'll finish that with hand sanding later. I can get that perfect by touch. All I wanted to get in this phase really was this curve here. I think you can see this on the second camera, but this curve transitioning up here into the heel, and try to get that as consistent as possible around the way. Now, how I did that was very straightforward. I had my line drawn here, as you saw in the last video, and I had the same line drawn on the same side. So I started by coming in from this direction to the line, in from this direction to the line, and then took out the meat in the middle. And that pretty much gets you where you need to be. Phase 2 now is going to be bringing this down on the edge to match this particular curve here. And then the more complicated part is bringing this piece over here, and I think you can still see this on camera, on the second camera, curving this round here and bringing that down. I keep mentioning one of my friends here, but his channel is a huge resource, Gio from Tornelli Guitars. His link is down in the channel description. But he mentioned when you're coming around to a heel, the easiest thing to do is get this curve right first. And then when your line for the heel is in here, and I think you can see this in the second camera, bring it down a vertical, bring it slightly ahead of where it actually finishes, and then replicate the curve a little bit further back so that you have a reference where you can follow this curve the whole way around. Now, to get that curve, I'm just using this little template. These are available in your local art shop for about, you know, €2 or €3. And I found the curve that works for me, and I'm just following that curve around. So if I can get this here, I think it's there, and that's fairly consistent. And if I can get that and then bring that back here, I'll know I'm in a good place then to round this down to the neck. So that's the next job. I'm just going to get carving. It's no point in recording it really, because it's just me running files and rasps along the neck. But when I'm done, I'll give you a look at it and you'll see the logic that I'm talking about here. I hope it makes sense. Fingers crossed it will. The easiest thing to do really when you're thinking about carving the heel, because it's very complex and there's multiple different directions you have to sand in and carve in, is to think of it like we're doing facets on the neck. So when we did the facets on the neck, we just did one piece, checked it, moved to the next piece, checked it, and bit by bit the shape started to emerge. And we're doing the same with the heel. So you should be able to see this on the second camera now, but we've pretty much followed that curve across here now and blended it into the side, which is great because this is the curve at the back of the guitar. And I have been taking the body of the guitar while I've been doing this and fitting the neck into it and just checking it for shape as we go. And so far, it's pretty okay. I think there's really only one last bit to do here now, and that's to take down the shoulders of the heel and blend those up too. Now, again, there's no real exact science here. I'm going to take some chisels, just little 8mm chisels maybe, and just take down the high spots. And then I might even just sand this, tiny bit of rasping. But all I'm looking to do really is take where we've stopped the neck curve here and just try and bring that up and lose it. So we're going to take a wide little berth here and bring it up a little bit, and the same on the other side. What can help, of course, here is to draw in some pencil lines. So we could literally just take this and say we want to bring that up here a little bit, and that'll just give us a visual aid for where we're going with our shaping tools. But the hard part is done. This little shoulder, if you get to this stage, this little bit is really, really easy. So I'm just going to do a tiny bit of shaping and we'll get those guys blended in, and then I'll show you the finished heel and we can start thinking about the volute then. So when you're chiseling, it really pays to have very, very sharp chisels. I spent about an hour and a half in the house the other night just watching TV and sharpening my chisels on the whetstones. I've got a set of Japanese whetstones that go from, I think, about 2,000 grit up to 12,000. And then at the very end, I sharpened them up with some metal polish on a strop. And as you can see here, this is going through the maple like it's pine. It's incredible. Maple is a very hard and dense wood. And this chisel just doesn't even think it's there. It's great. And there's a lot of satisfaction in sharpening chisels as well. So yeah, if you've got yourself good chisels and you spent money on them, getting a sharpening solution is well worth it. And even if you've got average chisels, you'd be surprised at the quality of the results you can get from just spending a bit of time giving them a bit of TLC. All right, I'm going to do the rest of this off camera. We'll come back and we'll have a look in a second, but you can see it's starting to take that shape already. And that is pretty much how you do a heel. So there's no great rocket science to it. You literally just take it bit by bit, curve up to the heel, curve around to the side, blend the shoulders in, and you're done. Now, the temptation right now is to keep sanding. Sanding every single little defect you can find here, everything you think is a sharp edge, but I would urge a word of caution, don't. Get everything that's pretty obvious out. Get any hollows out, get any hills out, but don't do final looking for defects until it's in the instrument, prior to putting any finish on, and you're just feeling that transition and wondering how it's going to be in real life. Look away, like I said before, and use your less dominant hand. So that's your left hand if you're right-handed, and your right-handed if you're left-handed, and that will give you a feel for what's happening with the neck. And then you can just dwell on any points you think are funny, put a pencil down, score some pencil marks on it, and sand until the pencil marks disappear. That's the trick. So heel is done. The volute now is going to be next. Now, this volute is a monster. It's way too tall. I think I need to cut at least 3/4 of a centimeter off that to make it a reasonable transition up into the volute. So I'm going to do that a little bit off camera and then figure out exactly how to carve this, just like the heel. I'm making this up as I'm going along, but we'll figure it out and it'll come right. The plan for the volute is pretty much what we did before. So on the little camera here, I've just drawn a horizontal line. I've done some curves up from the side and I've done a curve from the headstock back. These curves are just from random assorted crap I found in the workshop that happened to be round and happened to fit the shape, and I just drew around them. So just like before, we're going to try and carve this piece up from the neck first. Then we'll try and smoothen out this transition here from the neck back here into this curve. And then we'll try and bring this down. So it's going to be, you know, a 3 or 4 step process again. Bit of sanding, bit of chiseling, bit of rasping, but pretty much straightforward stuff. So I'm just going to get at it and I'll come back to you when I have the first bit done. Yeah, pretty much straightforward. That's the first part of the volute carved in. There's nothing really to say about it. It's just getting that curve nice and sharp because your thumb is naturally angled backwards like that, I want to say. So it's good to have it to be able to rest up there if you're in a first fret position. So what I'm going to do now is pretty much the same on the other side. I'm going to take this sharp edge off the volute. I have my line I can follow, and I'm just going to take this down and make it a little bit concave. And that will give us our little region here that we can then relieve back in for the third part. So I think I'm starting to get the hang of this. So that's a volute. Now, it's not a finished volute, but we have a bit of a pointy bit coming up from the headstock and coming up from the back of the neck. And all we need to do now is curve it in here and curve it in down there. So not long left to go. Doing the sanding, of course, means I lost the lovely lines I'd drawn and I need to draw new ones in, but that's pretty easy to do. So I'm going to get that out of the way now. I'm even going to freehand them. I think that's the easiest thing to do. And then start just chiseling away some of the wood, coming down, sanding it in, and then blending it. And that'll be the end of the neck carving, which is pretty amazing. All right, I'm going to get at that and I'll come back to you in 2 minutes. We've got a heel carve and we've got a volute and it's in, and oh boy, is that sexy. It's such a lovely thing to have in a guitar, and I don't know why more mainstream manufacturers don't do them. I know they take time and they probably don't have time for that in the factory in terms of profitability, but you know, if you're playing down in the first position and your thumb has something to rest against, oh, it's really nice. It's really, really nice. I've been playing with the body as well throughout the build off camera, just trying to make sure that the heel was carved properly in relation to the body too. And it turns out it's pretty damn good. Couldn't be any better really. So I'll take a picture of that and pop it up on screen now, and you'll get to see what that's like. It really is just flowing with the line of the body, which I'm very happy with. While I'm taking it apart, I'll just put another video up on screen now, just showing you the heel carve and the volute together and what they look like. And that's it for today, because it's late and it's Sunday night and I work in the morning. So I need to pick this up tomorrow. Tomorrow is going to be pretty much fretting. But I'm very much looking forward to getting it done and sharing the video with you. So I'm going to sign off for now and you'll see me in about 10 seconds. That didn't take long, so we're back. I've put the neck back on the guitar and bolted it on and all that stuff. One thing I want to do before the frets go in is just mark the scale length of the guitar. It's a 25-inch scale guitar. So I have a very long ruler here, which has both inches and centimeters, which is great. So I just want to make sure I'm right up against that, which I am. And I'm going to just tape it. Do that again just to be safe. And I'm just going to tape the ruler down so it doesn't really have a lot of room to move. And then take my square and come down to the 25-inch mark here and just note where that is. So that's done, which is great. And at least I won't have to jiggle a ruler on top of some frets now, which is really great. So yeah, one job out of the way. I've taken the neck off again, and the next thing I need to do is validate that this fingerboard radius is indeed 14 inches. Now it should be, because we used the router jig to set everything at 14 inches when we were cutting away the initial material. And then we sanded using this radius block here, which is set at 14 inches as well. Everything should be right, but it only takes a second to validate, and you should. And how you validate is with a little gauge like these. I'll put a close up on the screen so you can see what they are. These are sold in a set. You get every radius from 7.5 inches up to 20 inches, which is pretty much approaching classical guitar territory for being a flat fingerboard. And all we do really with these is just hold them up to the light and just validate at a few points at the neck if we can see any light coming through on the fingerboard. This is pretty good. Yeah, I'm happy that's 14 inches, so that's really good. There's two next jobs. One of them is going to be to recut all of these fret slots, and then the second is just to pop the grain on this, which I'll explain in a minute, and give it a quick sanding. So the first thing we're going to do is recut the fret slots. Now the reason we're doing this, I think I'll put a diagram on screen for this actually to explain it, is that when the fingerboard was a rectangle and we cut the slot, that slot was cut in relation to the top of it. So the slice that we put in was going to be parallel to the top. Now we've radiused the top. So effectively we have a slot where the top is probably close to the right length and the sides are nowhere near it. And we need that slot to follow the radius as well. Really easy to do this. So let me get some tools. This is a fret saw. We used it earlier in the series to cut all of the slots on the neck using the slotting jig. And in the slotting jig, it references height off this brass spine here. Now we need to reference the height off the bottom to recut the slots. And how we do that is with this little Perspex edition here. These are sold for about 10 or 12 euros. And you can just slide it left or right and it increases or decreases the height of what you want to cut. And when you're happy with it, you tighten up the thumb screws on the other side. Now, how do we set the height? Well, it's really easy. All we need to do really then is take the fret, hold it against the bottom of the saw, bring the Perspex guide down until it's just touching it, lock up the two thumb screws on the other side, and that's the height set. So I'm going to do that off camera and then we'll get some slots cut. There's really no method to this other than making sure when you're putting the saw down into the slot that you get it into the slot and you don't absolutely ruin your lovely fingerboard. So I usually just try and locate it gently. There we go. And all we're going to do is just saw very gently, making sure we go down at the edges on both sides, and then making sure that this Perspex part here is following the curve as we go. And that's it. There really is nothing else to it. So I have another 23 of these to do, which I'm going to do off camera, and then we'll jump on to the next stage of this. The next thing I want to do before we start doing the fretwork itself is to pop and raise the grain on the fingerboard. As you're sanding up through the grades of sandpaper, you get to a point where you're no longer really sanding the fingerboard anymore. For example, here, you're really just compacting dust down into the grain that's being cut by the sandpaper, and you get a sort of a diminishing return. In addition, a lot of the pieces of grain that have been cut are laying flat at the moment, but they're loose. It's only because we've been putting pressure on the board that they stay compacted. The second you put finish on, the moisture in the finish will lift them, and you'll be thinking, hey, I sanded this to 600 grade here. Why am I getting this rough texture? And it's because that loose grain hasn't been dealt with. So all we're going to do is we're just going to squirt a tiny bit of water along the fingerboard here. That was a lot. I didn't mean for it to be that much, but it doesn't really matter. And all we're going to do is just take off the excess with a bit of blue paper. Doesn't really need to be a whole lot. And I'll just mist this section here again where it's gone a little bit dry. And that's going to cause all those fibers to curl up and stand up to attention, I guess. And we can take some sandpaper and just knock them down. Now, I'm going to be knocking them down with very, very fine sandpaper, like maybe starting at 400 and then going to 600. It doesn't need to be heavy grit. And because we're doing this with light sandpaper, it's not going to affect the radius that we've put into the neck already. So it's just the lightest of hand sandings. That's pretty much air dried now. It took about 15 minutes just for the water to, I guess, pretty much disappear. But that kind of details my point. Even wiping off the excess of the water took a lot of black ebony sawdust up off the fingerboard. And already this feels incredibly just, it almost like has a powder texture to it on the top. So that's what we're going to knock off now. So yeah, all I'm going to do is take some 400, as I mentioned, and I might even put a block on it now for the sake of doing it now. And we're just going to very lightly sand all the way down and all the way back. All right, that's pretty good. Now, what we've done so far is gummed up the fingerboard with sawdust, so we need to get rid of that and then go again. I'm keeping all of this sawdust, as you can see here, because we're going to be using it to fill in the fret ends a little bit later. And it's surprising how much comes off each time. Already that's very smooth, but I think we can do a little bit better. I'm really happy with that. That's lovely and smooth. And we know now that smoothness is genuine because we have popped that grain. We're ready for the next step because this is really about as smooth as you'll ever want a fingerboard to be. And the next step really is to get the fret wire into the radius that we want. Now, fret wire comes pre-radius at about 7.5 inches, at least from the supplier I get mine from. And that won't suit our 14mm fret radius that we have going on here. So we need to change this. Now, we could bend it, but that'll never work. Thankfully, there's a tool for this, and it's effectively just a fret wire radiusing tool. And this is the one I have. It's from Elmer. I think it's probably the best one on the market. It does fret bending and fret wire straightening, depending on where you put this bearing. It's set up for straightening configuration now, which is what we want, to go from 7.5 to 14. But you can just pop it here and bend wire if you buy straight fret wire from your supplier. What's really nice about this one, and why I recommend this one, is that it's already got a bunch of radiuses built into the sides of the tool. So if you wanted to make fret wire that was 7.25 inch radius, you would just check your fret wire against the top, and well, it looks like this one is pretty much 7.25. But if you wanted to bend the wire and see how accurate you're getting, you can just hold it up to the various sides and see how close you're getting. So I think that's a pretty great tool. I'm going to set this up in my vise and we're going to start bending some wire and I'll show you how it works. Now, I'm really hopeful this will come out on camera because there's quite a lot of glare in the workshop. It's around sunset at the moment. And yeah, it's not playing too nicely. So what I'm trying to do here is just straighten this fret wire a little bit. So to do that, I need to adjust the wheels just a tiny bit and get it through. Now, once I have it in there, I can adjust this even more. And I tend to try and run it several times through just to make sure that we're getting the best chance of keeping this consistent as we go through. And it's a really satisfying sound as well. Okay, so that's quite round and we need to straighten that quite a bit yet. Keep turning. And already that's much straighter than it was. So I'm going to keep doing this off camera and get this fret wire to where it needs to be, to our 14-inch radius, and I'll show you the next steps after that. I'm pretty happy that this is the profile that we need. It's bang on 14. I'm going to put a picture on screen and you'll see the top fret wire is the one that came from the factory and the one at the bottom is the one that we've just straightened out now. So that's really good. I just want to do the rest of the fret wire from the set now so that it's all ready to go in one bunch. I've got all of my radius fret wire now in front of me, which is great. That's a big step out of the way. And the next thing we need to do now is cut them to the right size so that they suit each of the frets. Now, honestly, you could probably cut them all the same, but as luthiers, we try to just get them as close as we can and keep them organized so that we know which one goes where. Really, size-wise between here and here, the fret here is about 43 millimeters and the fret here is probably a little bit over 50. So it's not much of a muchness if you were to cut them all the same. It's just good practice. And then to keep an eye on them, I've 3D printed this little holder here. So when I cut the fret wire, I'll just pop it in and it'll stay there until I'm ready to use it. So cutting the fret wire is actually really, really straightforward. All we do is we'll offer it up to the neck, leave it overhang a tiny bit and snip the end off. And that's pretty much it. So I should point out that because this is stainless, this is quite difficult to cut. You're not going to be able to cut this with the side cutters you have in your workshop. You need to get a proper tool for it. These are fret end cutters made by Hosco, and these are pretty badass. They can go through anything really, but you need a proper tool for doing this, and it will put up quite a fight when you're trying to cut through it. So lots and lots of pressure is needed to get them to snip. Now, if at this stage you're worried about them being a little too long, don't worry about it, because after we glue them in, we're going to be cutting the edges off with this again anyway. So it's not the end of the world if that's the case. And fret ends go flying across your workshop after you've cut them. Okay, that's 4 done, 20 to go. That's all of the frets cut to length now, and they're obviously a little bit longer because we'll trim them once they've been put in place. The next part is something I haven't done before, so it's uncharted territory for me. I want to take the fret ends and cut the tang off so that you don't see it when it's pressed in at the side of the neck. I've bought this, which is from Stumac. It's a fret tang nippers. It's called the deluxe model. I don't know how deluxe it is or isn't, but apparently this is the one you need if you're working with stainless frets at all, because the other ones will just dull. And you just insert it, take it to where you want to nip the tang and squeeze, and a piece of metal goes flying out into your eyes, I presume, as all flying pieces of metal do. And you repeat that on both sides. All right, this is my 24th fret. I'm just going to move all my frets over here in case I knock them and we forget which one is which, because I've done that before. It's not a good time. All we're going to do here is try and remove some of this little section here at the end that will be not going into the fingerboard. So to do that, I'm going to bring in my little nippers. I'll get this set up first, and then hopefully you'll be able to see it on camera. I'm only going to take maybe 5 mils off the edge and give it a little squeeze. Oh, that was easy. And you can see there that it just took that off very quickly. Now it does seem to me that there is a bit of a tang left. So I'm just going to check that separately with a Stanley blade. I have one here actually. And see if I can feel that. And yeah, as I'm coming in from the edge of the fret, let me just zoom in on this here a minute so you can see what I'm talking about. As I'm coming in from the edge of the fret, this is catching just ever so slightly. I mean, I think I could probably get away with putting that in, but it does need to be filed a tiny bit. So that's the next job. I'm going to take out some diamond files and we'll just see how easy it is to remove that. These are a set of really inexpensive Draper diamond files. I think I got the whole set for like 12 euros. And I'm just going to take the flat file from the set and use that to abrade down what's left of the fret tang. Okay, there really is nothing that I can feel. And if there is, it'll be such a minute amount that it's probably going to seat into the fret slot anyway. So not the end of the world. So I've got a lot of these to do, and I'm going to do them all off camera. And when I come back, we should be able to take the next steps then on hopefully getting these in. All of these frets are finally done. And honestly, it didn't take that long. It probably took maybe, I don't know, 40 minutes. And I just watched some other YouTubers building their guitars. If you go into my video description, there's a guy there, Neil NSJ Guitars. Absolutely worth subscribing to. His content is so good. So yeah, if you're looking to kill time in the workshop and you've finished my video, go on over and watch Neil's. He's great. So let me just give you a close-up on one of these. There we go. So they look pretty good. And you can see the philosophy here where both sides are just nipped so that when you put it into the fingerboard, you're not going right to the edge with the tang. Now, the reason we do that is twofold. One is cosmetics. It just looks nicer not to have that down the side. The second is something called fret sprout. If you live in a humid country, what can happen is the wood can contract and expand and contract. And as it does, if you've got metal edges that are filed right on the edge, they can stick out. And as you're playing the guitar, they can actually, you know, I'm not going to say they'll cut your skin, but they'd certainly, they'd certainly chafe your skin as you're playing. So it just becomes more practical to do it this way too. It takes longer, but it's worth it. What we need to do now is put the frets aside for a minute and prepare the slots for taking the frets. Very easy. We just take a triangular file, and if I can just see if I'm set up on camera here correctly, I am. We're just going to very, very gently go in and just take that hard edge off. This is not designed to be a huge amount of chamfering by any means. It's just designed to break that edge so that when you put your fret into it and you've got that V shape, it naturally wants to come in and slot down into that V. And that's all it's about. So I've got 23 more of these to do, and then I need to blow out the slots again one more time to make sure they're clean. But we'll be pretty close to putting the frets in at that stage, and that's pretty great. So bear with me. This is supposed to make putting in frets more consistent and a little bit easier to do. I have done some testing with it, so you can pretty much just raise it up, line up your fret, and bring it down and clamp it. Now this piece here is a 14-inch radius caul that goes in, but you can take out this brass piece and you can put in whatever size you want. 14 is what I work with, so that's what I have. I have done some playing around with it, and when I was putting frets into a piece of plywood that I had, it was terrifying because I put too much pressure in and it actually caused the plywood to cave in and dent a little. So I need to be very careful with the amount of pressure I use here. We're going to be putting in the frets with glue as well. We're going to use medium super glue to fill the slots. There's a million philosophies on what you fill the slots with. It's up to you. Some people use PVA wood glue. Some crazy people use epoxy. Super glue is a pretty good alternative, but it must be the medium stuff, because if you put in the thin, it will just wick into the wood around it and you won't get it to do the job you want it to do. Let me get this set up, because it's going to take me a while to figure out exactly how to do this and to get comfortable with it. And likely when I come back, you'll see one or two frets being done, because I need to do one or two in my head before I do it on camera. So bear with me. I'll be back in a second. It's been about 3 hours since you saw me 2 minutes ago, because things went horribly wrong. I've 12 frets in pretty much, and they're not bad. There's a bit of work to do to them, but they're okay. Where it went wrong is here. This is the fret slotting saw that came with my fret slotting jig, and it has a kerf, in other words, how wide the blade cuts, of a little over 0.5 millimeter, 0.53 of a millimeter. This is my jumbo fret wire, which is wider. And I discovered that when I went to put in my 12th fret. I don't know why I started at the 12th fret, but I thought, hey, I'll start in the middle. It'll be supported by the neck caul. And when I went to push it in, it wouldn't go. It just would not go in. It went down about 1 millimeter and it stopped hard. I tried the fret press. I tried my fret hammer. And because I had put glue into the slot, when I went to take it out, Things got even worse. I managed to crack off part of the ebony fingerboard, which I've repaired now and you can't actually see. But it left me with the 12th fret slot, which was much wider than it should have been. And that's going to be something I have to live with, because when I recut it to the right width and when I put the fret in, it wanted to come right back out again. So I've put it in, I've flooded the cavity for the slot with glue. I've had it clamped for about 20 minutes and it seems to be holding. Hey, just jumping in while I'm editing the video, I've discovered something called a fret tang crimpers exists, which just offsets the fret tang to make it sit into slightly wider slots, so I wouldn't need to use glue like I did to hold the fret in place. So I know all the luthiers are about to just jump into my comments and tell me, hey, that tool exists. So don't worry, I've ordered one and it should be here next week and I'm really looking forward to getting it. Turns out I had the right saw all along. So this was a present from my brother, and when he bought it for me, I thought, oh, I'm never going to use that because it doesn't fit in my slotting jig, and no, I'm not going to use that. But it turns out this is great for cutting the slots, and I can come back and I can widen them with this, which is what I've been doing here. So I've frets 12 to 24 in. I've got 1 to 11 still to do. Right, let's get the camera set up. Enough moaning, enough complaining. Everything is recoverable, everything is fixable, and that's the sign of a good guitar maker. So I've been told it's not making mistakes, it's how you recover from them. And this, as things go, hopefully won't be a big one. And I'll be the only person who ever really knows about it, apart from my 700 or so subscribers. But you guys won't tell anybody, I'm sure. Okay, the slot I'm going to go for now is number 11 here. As I said, I've already cut this to depth with the 0.5 kerf width saw. So I'm coming in now with the 0.6 and I'm just letting it find its own center, and it's already in the slot, which is great. I'm just going to chamfer the top again, and we'll grab fret number 11. Double check it's the right one, which it is, which is great. And we'll grab the medium super glue once again. That's in. Now, this is quite a terrifying moment, because when you put the pressure down on this, the neck does want to take that pressure and fight against it a little. But what I'm looking for on the side is, like everything we do with glue, a little bit of squeeze out, which we have, and I'm just holding it there for about 10 seconds. And that's enough. Okay, that's how we put in a fret slot. Now, we do need to trim ends and things, but we'll come to that in a little bit. I'm going to do the rest of these off camera, let everything settle up overnight, and come back to it tomorrow. We'll trim up all the ends and we'll start doing some filing. Trimming these to length is really easy. We're just going to use the same side cutter as we used earlier when we cut these to the right width to install them. All we have to do is put them up against the fingerboard flush and just squeeze hard. Now, if you're a little bit cautious at this point, wearing light protection is a really good idea. I'm not worried because I know these don't go far due to how this cuts and how heavy the stainless frets are. I will put my hand over it, however, just to stop them pinging back. But it's just a case of putting them in, as I said, using whatever hand you have the most strength in. All right, as we can see, they're all cut to length, which is really cool. It's another step closer to finishing the neck, but if you run your hand down along the side now, these are incredibly sharp and we can't have it like that. They're also pretty much at 90 degrees to the fingerboard and we want them at an angle. So we're going to need to change the geometry of these frets. We're going to need to file them smooth with the edge of the neck and chamfer them a little bit. Now, the easy way to do this is just to buy a tool like this. This is from Guitar and Woods. I think it was about 20 euros. And all it is a block of wood with a file in there for filing metal, and it has a flat edge and it has an angled edge. And the flat edge is what we're going to use now. So all we do is we put it against the edge of the fingerboard and just run it like that. Now you can hear the metal as I'm doing it. When you're getting close to the end, you won't hear the metal anymore. You'll just hear it running on wood. So that's how you know you're getting close to it. You can of course go by feel too, but I wouldn't recommend that until you're getting very close to the end in case you manage to cut yourself. So let's dive in and do both sides. All I'm doing now is that getting it flush to the fingerboard. We'll chamfer it in a little bit. I'm pretty happy that our 90-degree filing is done now, but now we need to put our chamfer in, and it's very easy. We take the same file as I mentioned earlier and we just run it on its side. So like this. And as we go down, it's going to be exactly the same process. We will feel for the texture change. We will listen. We will look for swarf on the fingerboard. And once we're happy it's done, we just swap to the other side. Let's go. Okay, I think I'm really happy with that. I'm not hearing any more metal scraping as it's going along. And in fact, the more I take the file to it, the more I'm starting to see the first shoots of ebony dust start to kick up. So I know I'm hitting that fretboard edge and it's time to stop. There we go. And if I run my fingers up and down the fingerboard here on the left and the right, nothing's catching, nothing's sticking into me. There is more fret dressing we need to do later. We're going to be rounding over each of these frets and we're going to be doing a level and crown on it. But I want to finish building the neck for now because the setup is later when we're building the guitar. What we need to do now is get the nut in and get the tuners on, and that's going to be the end of this neck, which will be pretty damn amazing. For anybody who's eagle-eyed and has been watching, you'll have seen I've already put 2 holes in here where the nut shelf is for the nut to screw in. There's no real mystery to putting in the nut. You just put it in place. There's 2 screw holes. There's a tool that comes with it, a center punch that's specifically for it. And you just give that a little bang, drill your holes in that are a little bit smaller than the screws and screw it in. I'm just going to clean any dust out from our filing while we were going there. These are 3mm little bolts on the Floyd Rose. So I'm going to take those off for a moment. And I'll put a close-up on screen just now, but you can see that there's 2 little Phillips screws ready to go down into the nut shelf itself. All right, that's the nut in. We're very nearly there. I'm just going to get the tuners now and we'll start figuring those out. Okay, so I have my tuner holes here at the back of the headstock, and all we need to do for now is just put them in, offer them up a little bit like that, flip it over. I hope we can still see this. Pop the retaining nut in from the other side and just hand tighten it for now. So these are 10mm nuts on the top, which we will be tightening up still by hand, but with the aid of a wrench later, just to make sure we get them in the right orientation. Yeah, I know. I haven't tightened any of these in or put any screws in, but look at the neck. It is so cool. That actually really has some weight to it now with all of the hardware in there. It's surprising how heavy the neck gets as soon as you start putting tuners in. So the next job I need to do now is align all of these tuners so that they're in line with each other and 90 degrees. And we can just do that with the aid of a straight edge along here. And then we'll just pop some screws in. Oh, there we go. That's one in. And already that looks great. As I've been building this guitar, I've been keeping every single bit of sawdust, as you can see here inside in this little cap. So this is all ebony sawdust, which is what I knew I would need. And we're going to fill in this, where is it? This guy here, just to the left of this dot. And it's very straightforward. Now, I wish I had a little more light here, but I'll have to make do with what I have. And the plan is we're just going to squirt in a little super glue into that slot, and we're going to use the precision needle to do it. So bear with me while I get it out of the bottle. Okie doke. Probably more than we need, but it is wicking super glue and it should be drawn back down into that slot. So not the end of the world. Now, picking up sawdust and applying it with your fingers where there's super glue is a recipe to glue your fingers to something. So I use a utility blade and I'm just going to drop it in there just like that. And then we're going to create almost like a slurry with the super glue and just smush it in as best we can. And take a little brush, brush away the excess, and already you can see that pretty much that is filling in most of the slot. Now we'll probably need to come back in a little bit and do it again, because as the glue dries it will sink in a little bit and pull in some of the sawdust with it. And in fact we can probably just do it now and get it over with. So let's get a little bit more glue. There we go, just the tiniest bit. And we'll get a tiny bit more sawdust. It's always hard to gauge the amount of sawdust you need really, but as long as you have enough of it, then who cares? And smush it all in again. And already I can see, because the sawdust is quite a small particulate, the properties of the super glue means it wants to dry pretty quickly. So I'm betting that in about 10 minutes time I could come back and sand this and it'll look perfect. So that's pretty much how you do that. And there's no mystery to it. It's very easy. And just because there's a lot of frets to backfill, there's a lot of work to do in that. So I'm going to do all of that off camera before the next episode. But for today, let's wrap this episode up. Well, with that, this wraps kind of a series within a series where we've taken 3 episodes to go through the fundamentals of building a neck. And I really hope if you're watching this and you're thinking of giving guitar building a go, you'll have picked up some of the concepts and some of the ideas and thought to yourself, yeah, I can do this. It's not that hard, because it really isn't. It's just about sitting down, thinking 2 or 3 steps ahead and fixing problems as you come across them. Talking about problems, my lack of experience really started to show in this particular episode with the issue we had cutting the fret slots a hair too thin. But I know what that is now and I know what's causing it, so I'll be able to have that corrected for every build going forward. And we recovered and we still have a perfect fret job to work with on this instrument. So in the grand scheme of things, I learned something, I fixed my mistake, nothing went wrong. Happy days. I'll see you in the next episode. If you're at the Birmingham Guitar Show when this video is due to go live, say hello. I'll be wearing something like this. Let's have a beer. And otherwise, yeah, I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks, guys.